I have started the recording.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending today. I'd like to welcome you to OER in the Community College Library, Experiences from Two Librarians. And this is brought to you by CJCLS, the Community and Junior College Library section of ACRL. My name is Ken Simon. I am the Reference and Online Services Librarian at Pasadena City College in California. I'll be moderating today, meaning that I'll be introducing our speakers and relaying some questions at the end. If you do have questions as we go along today, please remember you can type them into chat, but we'll be saving those questions for a Q&A period at the end of both of the presentations today. What I'm going to do before I introduce our two speakers is to start with a couple screens of some brief definitions. These are some terms that we'll be using today, and I'm not going to read them out loud to you, but I'm going to stop on the first of the two screens here for a minute, just so you can glance at these two terms, so you have a little background on what we're talking about today. I see someone said they have no sound from me. Are you able to hear me now? Great, thank you. And here's the second screen of definitions. Okay, we're going to move along. You'll be hearing these terms as we go through today's sessions. I'm going to introduce the first of our two presenters now, and that is Brittany Dudek. Brittany Dudek has been the library coordinator of CCC Online, that's Colorado Community Colleges Online, since 2014. She's also an adjunct faculty member in the Library Technical Assistance Program at Illinois Central College. She is originally from Illinois, where she started her library career in youth services. Brittany spends the majority of her non-work time taking full advantage of living in Colorado by skiing, hiking, and climbing as much as possible. That sounds great. So she will be presenting today on statewide OER efforts in Colorado. And Brittany, I'll turn it over to you now.
Great, thanks, Ken. As Ken mentioned, my name is Brittany Dudek. I'm the library coordinator at CCC Online. CCC Online is a consortium of the Colorado Community College system where we offer some or all of the online courses to the community colleges throughout the state. I serve as the Vice Chair of the Colorado Department of Higher Education's statewide OER Council, and I'm also the co-chair of CCC Online's OER Task Force. So today I'm going to share with you both perspectives of the statewide OER efforts that are going on in Colorado. First, from the high level at CDHE, and second, as the community college librarian that provides online courses, specifically online OER courses to 13 colleges across the state. So first, let's look at the state OER Council efforts. I'm going to start with the highlights over the last few years, and then I'll delve a little bit deeper into some of the more exciting ones. OER efforts have existed at various institutions and various levels for quite some time in Colorado. In October of 2016, the state librarian at the time, Jean Hayner, sent out a request for information about what colleges were doing to support open educational resource efforts to the academic libraries across the state. And then this turned into just an informational meeting at the Department of Higher Ed where there were about 30 people or so representing different job functions and different institutions from across the state library, the Joint Budget Committee, 4 years, community colleges, pretty much everyone, where we contributed to a draft bill that ended up being Senate Bill 17258, which was using open educational resources in Colorado. That bill charged the creation of a OER Council, as well as a report of the state of OER in Colorado, as well as to make some recommendations for the future. We partnered with WCET and we offered open educational resources in Colorado. We surveyed all institutions that offer public education in Colorado, as well as individuals, specifically seeking out feedback from parents, students, educators, not just the high-level administration. Fortunately, the state legislatures agreed with our report, and that eventually led to House Bill 18-1331, which funded the establishment of a 3-year Open Educational Resource Council, as well as a grant program and much more. The CDHE OER Council established and launched a grant program in September of 2018 for the state of Colorado, with CCHE conferring nearly $550,000 in grants for February of 2019. And I'm excited because the House bill funds an additional 2 years of grants at an even higher level. So here are some of the key findings from our statewide survey and reports that we did in 2017. As I mentioned, as part of the Senate bill, we were charged with surveying the state, and together with WCET, we authored 2 reports. The first, Open Educational Resources in Colorado, the prettier cover, if you will, provided survey results, case studies, as well as some recommendations. The second, which went to the Joint Budget Committee and the Education Committees of the General Assembly for the state of Colorado, was a little less pretty. However, we provided Colorado-specific recommendations. Some of the key findings: nearly 90% of the individuals that we surveyed agreed that textbook costs have become a serious affordability barrier to students attending Colorado's colleges and universities. We had 26 out of 27 public institutions participate, and they indicated that the cost students pay for higher education is a major or moderate concern to the senior leadership at each institution. And individual participants also agreed that lowering the cost of education is beneficial to students and Colorado society as a whole. And for those of us who have worked in open educational resources or are familiar, we're pretty aware of those statistics, but it was nice for our council to be reminded that our state feels the same way as the larger reports that are kind of worldwide or, across the United States. The second bill in 2018 was House Bill 18-1331. And here are some of the highlights. The first was to implement the Open Educational Resource Grant Program and ensure that faculty and students at institutions of higher education across the state can easily identify and access the open educational resources that were developed using grant money. That could mean that students know which courses are using grant materials as well as which courses are just OER. Second was to recommend the commission of a statewide policy for promoting the adoption, creation, and the use of open educational resources, which means that we provide recommendations for creating policy or for creating initiatives at institutions. We also are charged with facilitating the professional development and the sharing of knowledge for open educational resources. And we'll be doing that by hosting a number of professional development opportunities as well as a statewide convening in May. And last, we were charged with creating and maintaining a website to link to the materials that the council develops as well as all of the grant resources. Here's a picture of the 2017 OER Council. One of the things that was extremely interesting and I thought very important was that the bill itself gave direction as to who was supposed to serve on the OER Council. We have one student representative who is actually dually enrolled at a community college and at a 4-year institution, and she's provided some great input and great perspective. We have 5 faculty members, 3 librarians, 1 instructional design expert, 1 administrator, and 1 technologist. And it should be said that many of us can serve in multiple roles. For example, I am a librarian, but I'm also an adjunct faculty member. So we have a really great cross-section of institutions represented from across the state. We also are, we have the CDHE Director of Educational Innovation as kind of our convener and gets us going on the right path. And he's been invaluable in terms of help and assistance and support. We're also asked to have representatives from the State Library, the Executive Director of the Department of Education, and the Commissioner of Education's office. Also, we are appointed by the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Higher Ed, and we were recommended by our institutions, and then CDHE makes the ultimate decision as to who's going to serve on the statewide council. And we all agree to serve for 3 years. So this is, I think, the most exciting part. These are the grants that we funded in our very first year, and these were just conferred on February 7th, so it's still really new for us and very exciting. You can see here that we had multiple levels of grants available. We had institutional level, and those were grants that could go from $10,000 to $999,000. And those went to community colleges and 4 years alike, which was really exciting. The second group that we offered was small group or individual grants. The small group and individual grants were meant to go directly to faculty, instructional designers, librarians, or groups that were working on projects that affect single courses or multiple courses, but are really being spearheaded at the faculty, instructor, librarian, or instructional design level. The institutional grants that we funded were generally grants that were setting the stage for larger OER programs, Z degrees, high enrollment courses, concurrent enrollment courses, and things like that. We also offered a couple of travel funds to attend the conference that we'll be having in May, and those were offered to 3 colleges. We offered $549,000 in grants in just this first year, and that's really exciting. In our year 2 and 3, we've asked for $600,000 for grants for both of those years, so I'm hopeful that we'll get it. We've had a lot of support at both the commission level and the state level, and so we'll see what happens in the future. But we're all pretty optimistic that we'll at least receive the recommendations for the $600,000 in grants for the next 2 years. So as you can see, there's a lot of open educational resource going on, work going on at the various community colleges and 4-year institutions from across the state. But I also wanted to take a minute and tell you about what we're doing at CCC Online. CCC Online is a consortium of the Colorado Community College system, and we serve the 13 community colleges in the state of Colorado. We have just under 50,000 annual enrollments, and we have 215 courses. We have about 450 instructors. In fall of 18, we offered 62 zero textbook cost material courses. And in fall of 19, we'll be scaling that up to 82 courses that don't offer or require textbooks. We're excited to announce that in fall of 19, we'll be offering an early childhood education degree with designation, which is basically our version of an associate's degree. One thing that's unique to CCC Online is the fact that we do a master course model, and we control our course design and development process. And this means that while we do offer or will offer 82 zero textbook cost courses in fall of 19, that means that every single section of every single one of those courses is also OER. Instructors don't select their materials themselves, so we can say that all 42 sections of English 121, for example, will be using the same open educational resources. This means that we have saved students over $770,000 in a single semester. And when we pull our fall and summer numbers, I imagine that we'll be breaking that $1 million mark pretty quickly. So we have a lot of OER courses or zero textbook fee courses, depending on how you'd like to refer to those. But I'd like to tell you a little bit about what works for us. CCC Online developed an operational definition of what OER meant to our organization. And we developed that through the OER task force on our campus. And the OER task force is made up of a librarian, instructional designer, 3 program chairs, 2 associate deans, our director of student services, our director of business services, our academic excellence director, as well as our academic technology director. So we've got a really great cross-section of departments covered within our OER task force. And together we decided that the operational definition that made the most sense for our institution was that OER for us means no textbook fees for students. Students may still be required to purchase other learning materials, such as a lab kit, a microscope, software, or calculators. And most of this is because we are an online institution. We offer only online asynchronous courses, and therefore students can take biology and chemistry, and they have to complete those labs at their home. So for us, we removed the digital content for the courses, the textbooks, but students may still need to buy a graphing calculator, or they may still need to buy a microscope, depending on which course they're enrolled in. This operational definition is something that we're constantly reevaluating, but for now, this is the one that works for us. So I would recommend, if you're starting or looking at trying to systemize an open educational resource program at your institution, that you come up with an operational definition that works for you. I think we'd all love to be purists, but unfortunately, that's not always an option. Some other things that are unique to the way that we do our courses is we use a master course model, as I mentioned. And this means that we will develop with a subject matter expert who is a faculty member, as well as an instructional designer, a single course, all of the explorations, the content, the assignments, the discussions, and all of those things that are needed to make a course successful. We use QM to make sure that our courses meet quality. And then we have the same course for all of the students who take our courses. And this ensures that all of our students across all 13 colleges receive the same educational experience. However, this model does mean that it's really easy for us to go OER with our courses because we are designing from the top and then duping them out. At the administrative level, we can say, we think that these courses should go OER because material is available or because the costs are too high, for any other reason that you can imagine. The way that our process works is that our subject matter experts, our instructional designers, and the librarian, which is me, we collaborate. We get together, we have a vision meeting, we have a kickoff meeting, and then throughout the process of designing the course, I work with the subject matter expert to ensure that they can find or locate the materials that they want to use for that course. I also pre-curate the content for each of those courses before we decide to develop them. In Colorado, we have something unique called the CCNS, or the Common Course Numbering System. And this sets up all of the competencies and the topical outlines for many of our guaranteed transfer courses. And that means that English 121 students at one institution will be learning the same thing at a different institution. So what I do is I get the list of courses that we think might go OER, and I curate content that's available, open textbooks, modules, assignments, videos, pretty much anything you can think of, to those topical outlines. And I provide that curation sheet to each of our subject matter experts or our faculty members so that they have a good idea of what content is available as they are working on their course. Kind of a lot of work for me because I am a solo librarian, but my job has changed quite a bit, and now the majority of my responsibilities do revolve around OER, and so I can spend most of my day just doing these curation documents and then sending them out. But ultimately, as with any institution, academic freedom is real, and our subject matter experts are the ones who look at the sheets that I've provided and make all of the decisions about what content they want to use. They decide if they'd like to adopt a full textbook, if they'd like to adapt some resources, or in many cases, sometimes they write everything themselves. But we continue to collaborate through the 5 or 6 months that we are working on each of the courses, because as we all know, new material is coming out constantly. So I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer now and have you take it away.
Okay, this is Ken again. I'm going to introduce Jennifer because she has not been introduced yet. And thank you, Brittany, very much. That was great. And keep in mind, everyone, that if you have questions, I see people are typing them into chat. We will be reading as many questions and answering them at the end as we have time to do. So let's move along to Jennifer Snook Brown. She is in her 3rd year as the OER librarian at Tacoma Community College. She's been fortunate to work as a librarian across the U.S. in Texas, Wisconsin, Oregon, and Washington State, as well as abroad in the United Arab Emirates. She's also a proud 2nd-generation librarian, as her mother is a retired school librarian. And my favorite thing is that if you ever ask her how to pronounce her name, she will let you know that Snook Brown. Just remember, it rhymes with Booktown, which is perfect for a librarian. Jennifer is going to present on OER at Tacoma Community College. So go ahead, Jennifer.
All right. Thank you, Ken, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, Brittany. It was so illuminating, inspiring to hear about OER coordination in Colorado at a statewide level. I was taking notes while you were speaking. And I'm hoping that everybody can hear me okay. I know there's been some chat about the sound, but everything sounds good from my end. So I'll continue. I'm seeing some now that says yes, good. Okay, so all right. So again, thank you. I'm Jennifer Snook Brown, or you can refer to me as Booktown. I also answer to that. I'm the OER librarian at TCC, and I do want to note that Washington State also has a statewide OER infrastructure of support. TCC is part of the Washington State Board of Community and Technical Colleges, known as SBCTC, which has an educational technology and open education department that supports OER initiatives. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm here now to share a single institution perspective, so I will focus on OER within the context of Tacoma Community College. So I think I've got control of the screen. Sorry, little technical. So please stand by. Yes, okay. So these are the guiding questions that I'm hoping to answer through my part of the presentation, so keep these in mind. I want to provide some perspectives on how our OER program developed at our institution, as well as how my position as a faculty OER librarian came about, and how it fits into our overall OER program and open culture. First, a little bit about TCC, just to have some background, and to provide some geographical orientation. Tacoma is located southwest of Seattle. And as you see on this slide, we have significant percentages of students on need-based financial aid, as well as students who are working while they're going to school here and going to school while raising children. We also have a high percentage of ethnically diverse students. So OER is particularly impactful on our campus, and I consider OER work to be part of our college's strategic goal of achieving equity. This is an abbreviated timeline of OER at TCC. I just picked some of the highlights, similar to Brittany with her timeline. The beginning of our OER program really came from our students. Our student government really pushed for an OER pilot project back in 2012. This led to an OER project coordinator position. You may have heard of Quill West. She's been presenting internationally now. And this was a limited term position when it began, and that position was under the library department. In and around fall 2014, this position did get made into a full-time position and was retitled as instructional designer and OER coordinator and got moved under the e-learning department. And at that time, Quill West transitioned into a similar OER project coordinator role at nearby Pierce College. So that meant that TCC, we had a gap of official OER support until spring 2015, while there was a search and hire for a new instructional designer and OER coordinator position. But faculty continued to work on OER courses during that time, and this faculty and student enthusiasm for OER continued to grow, and that led to the creation of my position as faculty OER librarian so that we had cross-campus OER support. I am in my third year in that role at TCC, and as you can see on this timeline, we've grown from 16 class sections in the pilot semester quarter in fall 2012 to 125 OER sections this past fall. We also have a new instructional designer and OER coordinator, Dale Coleman, and you'll see him a little bit later on. So my position is officially designated 50% OER support and 50% traditional reference and instruction. To be sure, there's a lot of crossover in these roles. Librarians are faculty at TCC, so my position is a full-time tenure track position. And going through that tenure process, I think has really helped me figure out my role as an OER librarian to add some meaning to the words on paper of my job description. For example, what does OER support really look like? So I'll expand on that to be sure. But before I move on, I do want to say that although I'd been a professional librarian for over a decade before I became an OER librarian, I had been a more traditional academic librarian, if there is such a thing, but basically focusing on instruction, reference, and collection development. But what drew me to this position was the innovative nature and vision of this role. And once I started looking into OER, I realized that I had been kind of on that path already, but I just didn't know it was called OER. And I share this because some of you might also be able to relate to this and have a similar experience to how you've come to know and learn more about OER. So the big picture of OER support, given the history of how OER began at TCC, it makes sense that OER support and leadership is primarily shared between the library and e-learning. E-learning might be called something different on your campus, like maybe online learning or educational technology or educational support, but that's what we call it here at TCC. And so this drawing here, which our library director, Candace Watkins, drew, visually captures how that works. And if you can't read it, I did a thing with my husband. He was like, I can't read that. So I'll explain what this means. So at the top, it says innovative instruction, and it starts with, open paths, open pedagogies, and there's, it's a triangle here. So e-learning really deals with the demand and interest in universal design, instructional design, and accessibility, those kinds of things. And then the library offers resource support and information literacy. And between the two of us, e-learning and the library, there's a strong culture of sharing and communication. So both the OER coordinator and I, as the OER librarian, we both support innovative instruction, and we consider ourselves partners. It's good to note that on our campus, both the library and e-learning departments are under the Office of Instruction. And the coordinator part of the instructional designer and OER coordinator role refers to coordinating the stipends for OER course development. And I'm part of that team of support for those course stipends. And I think it's important for me to point out that OER is funded on our campus as part of whole course development. So we take a holistic view of supporting OER rather than just funding like creation of OER texts. So integrating OER into the course development process allows us to link OER to best practices in instructional design and accessibility, for example, and reinforces the concept that OER is not something extra, but rather part of course development and pedagogy. So I also work with faculty outside of that stipend work, as many faculty members decide to convert to OER or slowly integrate OER into their courses on their own. We also have an OER steering group, as you can see on the slide, and this initially consisted of just the OER and e-learning, but it's kind of organically grown to also include the bookstore, and this year we're working on making a student government position a permanent part of that steering group. So OER savings. The savings are impressive. The first goal for the pilot project was to hit $250,000 of savings for students within the first 2 years, and they actually exceeded that in the first year. And so we're regularly hitting over $1 million in student savings, textbook savings a year. But more than that, I also want to highlight how the impact of OER has been huge for our students beyond just dollar terms for textbook savings. So on the right column of the slide, you'll see some statistics for Student Achievement Indicator Points, or SAI. And this is the outcomes-based funding portion in our state for community and technical colleges. So part of our state funding is tied to these SAI points, and these points are based on how many students complete courses at different markers, like 15 credits earned, 30 credits earned, etc. So the fact that this preliminary data is demonstrating that students taking OER courses seem to be completing their courses at a higher rate is encouraging, and I think it speaks to more than just the financial barriers that OER courses address. One note that tracking these kinds of statistics is not possible without the proper labeling of courses, and that's an ongoing issue that I'm not going to have time to go into here. Just know that it takes a village, the whole campus really, to engage in the proper labeling of OER and low-cost courses, and I'm just a small part of that endeavor. These last few slides connect to the final guiding question about how my position fits into TCC's overall OER program. Again, I'm not going to go into detail about how I work with our state board OER efforts or outreach beyond our campus. Rather, I'm just focusing on how I interact with major groups across TCC. So working with e-learning, One of the first things that we did when I started at TCC was create a central point of contact, a simple email address, oer@tacomacc.edu, that both I and the instructional designer and OER coordinator have access to. And I think this reflects the collaborative spirit and team-based approach that we have about OER at TCC. I have weekly meetings with my current OER partner, who is Dale Coleman. You can see him here. And I think he's signed into the chat, so hi, Dale. And fun fact, Dale Coleman was a librarian at the TCC library before he transitioned into this role this past fall. So, hey, I just saw that he said hi to everybody. So I love the fact that librarians are really, literally leading OER at TCC. Working with faculty, one of the first things that I did when I started at TCC was create a faculty LibGuide for OER, and you can see the address here. And this guide has really grown the past 3 years. It's basically an OER landing spot for our faculty, and this is where our OER subject guides and other OER starting points are linked off of. And when Brittany was talking about the curation documents, it's similar to that. We just call them subject guides here. And regarding formal projects, course stipends, this includes the course stipends, working with the instructional designer and OER coordinator. And Dale and I set up joint meetings with faculty throughout that process. There are a lot of informal projects as well, lots of variety here. And this is a major reason why my position was created, to work with faculty who may not be interested in a stipend or just want to find supplemental materials, or just how to find what's out there in their field, or maybe just have questions about how to ethically use OER or how to use materials without violating copyright. And oftentimes I will meet with a faculty member who, quote unquote, wants to talk about OER, but it ends up that they really just need to know how to use library resources like articles, ebooks, or films from our databases. So again, it's super, super useful to have a librarian in this position, as I can seamlessly transition between library resources and true OER. And I agree with Brittany, we'd all love to be purists, but that's not always an option. So it's really good to have that flexibility and knowledge of no extra cost kind of resources as well. Regarding formal outreach with faculty, this includes professional development workshops and presentations, and I do a lot of email communication. For example, I've started doing a monthly series of OER in your library themed emails to all staff to acknowledge and address frequently asked questions about OER. And in formal outreach, I consider attending and actively participating in programs on campus an essential part of my job, as I often then get stopped by fellow faculty with questions on the spot or immediately after the program. And I feel like this more informal word of mouth outreach is really vital. And when I'm engaged in those programs, then I have the opportunity to bring up OER related questions or considerations, which I feel is a good way to demonstrate that open culture affects our campus culture across the way. It's not just OER being something extra, it's something that affects lots of things and is really integrated into the whole process. So working with librarians, I work with a great team of librarians here at TCC. We're faculty, librarians are faculty at TCC, but of course our work as librarians is different from other classroom faculty. I think we can all relate to this. I'm not preaching to the choir. And this slide in particular might be useful for those of you who may not have an official OER program at your campus. I'm going to say yet. This might help you see that there are ways to start integrating OER and open practices in your own library, where you can start leading the change on your own campus. So our library director, Candace Watkins, has really encouraged me to lead efforts to integrate open practices into our library team workflows. And here are a few examples of how we're doing that. For example, we are openly licensing all materials created by our librarians and library staff. That includes handouts, LS course materials, and the courses themselves. We teach standalone library science courses, learning objects, our LibGuides, which essentially serve as our website. And this is not a small thing to just say we're going to openly license all materials and poof, it's done. This has been a multi-year project to get us to this point, and it has involved every librarian and library staff member. Just really great work. It feels like we're really invested in this. And as a team, we've chosen the CC by SA, the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license, as our default license for our library. And on this slide, you can see this is a screenshot of our default CC license statement, which is at the bottom of our websites. So again, our LibGuides and our website are basically the same thing. We also have a liaison model for collection areas, and one way that we've been expanding that model is to collaborate on OER subject guides, as well as partnering to visit faculty in department meetings. So we, that means the liaison librarian and myself, can have joint info and Q&A sessions with faculty about library resources as well as OER in their subject areas. We've also worked as a library team to integrate the concept of open into our library mission statement. And most importantly, working with students. This is some insight into how I work with students in my role as OER librarian. Last year, I created an OER LibGuide for students, and this guide looks very different from the faculty OER LibGuide. And this guide really developed out of growing opportunities to teach students about OER as more faculty on our campus are integrating OER into their assignments. For example, I've been working with some English faculty who require students to use openly licensed multimedia in their PowerPoint presentations. So I get to teach a few sessions about that each quarter. And with Dale Coleman, our instructional designer and OER coordinator, I'm also working more with our student government leaders this year. Dale and I are teaming up with our student government to do a thank you letter writing campaign to faculty with students for Open Education Week this year. And we're also collaborating with the student government to create, or rather adapt, a TCC specific student OER handbook. As a community college, we have a lot of student turnover, so this handbook is to help educate new student leaders about OER itself, ways to raise awareness, as well as archive the story of how OER at TCC started with our students. So again, thank you for listening to me. Hopefully you have a bit more insight into these guiding questions about how our OER program developed at TCC and how it continues to develop, and how my position as a faculty OER librarian came about and how it fits into our overall OER program. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Jennifer. I've been getting some really good questions coming through for both of our presenters. So what we're going to do now is a little bit of Q&A. And because the questions came first on my list, I'm going to start with you, Brittany, if you're there and able to unmute.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. So the first question that I see that came through for Brittany, how did your faculty agree to all use the same OER textbook? And are they happy teaching from the same text? I think this is about the English OER item.
Sure. So our model has been, CCC Online was created as a department of the Colorado Community College system about 20 years ago. And online education 20 years ago was not quite the same as the online education that I think we're all familiar with now. Also, because CCC Online is a consortium of the 13 community colleges, it's imperative that our courses meet the standards of all 13 colleges. And one of the ways that we do that is by using the master course model. We integrate, like I said, Quality Matters, which if anyone's institution is a Quality Matters institution, I highly recommend exploring how you can integrate some of those design properties or design principles into your information literacy and course resources. But the master course model, where one faculty member or one person creates the course and develops all of the content for the course, and then everyone teaches the same course, has been a model that we've used since the beginning. And we do that, like I said, because of the competencies, and we have to ensure that all of our courses teach the same competencies that all 13 colleges require, because each of our courses is actually made up of students from all over the state of Colorado. So some faculty members don't like teaching the exact same course as other faculty members. They are allowed to put their voice in a variety of different ways, announcements, adding to the discussions, videos, things like that. But it's just the model that we've always had, and so therefore those who choose to teach with us understand that that is the model that they'll have to follow.
Okay, thank you. And Jennifer, just to sort of follow up on that same thing for you, have you dealt with faculty who want to choose non-OER textbooks or alternative titles, and how have those issues been dealt with where you've come into this?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as Brittany was talking, and I wrote that on my notes about the Master OER course model. With ours, it depends on the department, because some of our departments are set up, especially I'm thinking in the sciences, where they have a lead instructor who basically maintains the master course, and then the adjuncts or other instructors who teach that course use that same course. And so then in that case, we've funded the OER course development from the leader of, like, microbiology is coming to mind. She's the leader, and so she's developing that content, and the expectation is then all the other sections of that class will use that content with some minor tweaking. And actually the LS, Library Science 101, that's our library research class at TCC that the librarians teach, is set up in that way. So we have a core course and we have core assignments, and it's all openly licensed. And then we have a little bit, we have ways that we can tweak it to our own, personality or individualism. But the main content is the same. But other departments are not like that. So English, for example, we have lots of variety of English courses, and several different variations of OER are being used in English courses. So it really depends on the instructor and how that specific department is structured, if that makes any sense.
Okay, and this sort of follows up on that as well. Has there been any tension between campus bookstores and these OER initiatives? And if so, how did you overcome that?
Is that for both of us, or
that
for
can
me?
Be for either of you who wants to chime in on that? Yeah.
So our course materials at CCC Online are integrated directly into our courses. So even if a course chooses not to be OER, it will have digital content. There's a few very rare exceptions where we are still using a textbook, but most of them are digital content courses. We've tried to mitigate some of the potential conflict between a bookstore and the other goals of the institution by setting the strategic priorities and aligning our OER initiatives through CCC Online strategic priorities and goals, and then up through the Colorado Community College system strategic priorities and goals. We have a new chancellor at the system level, and his main initiatives are equity and reducing costs, as well as concurrent enrollment. And we've been able to show that our open educational resources support those initiatives. And so by including the bookstore in our OER steering committee meetings, as well as our director of business services into those OER steering committees meetings, they have a chance to voice their concerns and their frustrations, just like everyone else does at our department. Doesn't mean that we always get to an answer that everyone is happy with, but we usually get to an answer that everyone can live with.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's really great to hear that at the statewide level in Colorado. And I think that we've gained so much with our bookstore manager, and now one of our bookstore staff members is part of our OER steering group at Tacoma Community College. And from my own personal experience, I've gained so much more insight into how the bookstore operates, and what are the commonalities of, like Brittany mentioned, the mission of what we're here for. And participation has led to some really interesting conversations, and a focus on finding low-cost printing options for OER, because a lot of our students still prefer print options for OER texts or downloadable versions of the course content. So we're looking at investigating low or print-on-demand options or lower cost printing options for OER for students who prefer that. And we've done some cross trainings as well, to cross trainings with the library and the OER steering group and the bookstore together to further understand these concepts and how they kind of intersect in our own areas. So yeah, I agree with Brittany, like that there's a lot in common there, our major goals that we want to help students. That's really what it comes down to. But how can we do that together? Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And this also goes to both our presenters. Someone posted and wants to know if you're aware of any assessment of student success factors for courses using OER that go beyond completion. So things like grades or achievement of learning outcomes.
Yeah, I can jump in. I did see a couple of questions like that. And that's one of the indicators that we're using at TCC, the completion. I do want to highlight back to when Quill started the pilot project of OER at TCC. She was really instrumental in how she began in starting the open culture, where she began looking at sections of classes like highly enrolled, so the most impacted classes, the most enrolled classes in across campus. And there was really a wide range. There was IT, there was biology, there was English, there's communications class. And so certain sections went OER. So she was actually able to then compare the grades that students made in those OER sections and compared it to the sections, the grades and sections that weren't OER. So I think that comparison right at the beginning was really great in order to establish that there was no fundamental different, students in OER classes weren't doing less, weren't, grade-wise. And she also started doing student surveys. So, would you take a class again that was OER? How was this experience, to get that student qualitative data out there at the beginning as well? So I think that those two approaches right at the beginning of the pilot project, OER pilot project at TCC, really set a foundation of a positive assessment, and that assessment was built in from the beginning, I would say. So we're always looking at assessment. So I think that's a great question. I don't think it's a one size fits all, but what, is doable and what, is going to make a difference on your campus.
We're currently working on two projects. One is really similar to the one that you mentioned, Jennifer. We've been doing courses that are OER since 2011, but no one really knew that they were OER. It was kind of just a decision that was made, and it wasn't until the last few years that we realized what we were actually doing. I can relate. So that's why our numbers in terms of financial savings, we made an organizational decision that we're going to start counting savings as of spring of 2017, even though we've been doing OER courses for 6 years prior. Regardless, one of the projects that I'm currently working on is comparing the success rates, the drop rates, the DWF rates, and the student satisfaction scores from our surveys of our OER courses pre and post conversion to OER. So we're looking at courses that have been taught for at least 2 semesters with traditional materials and comparing them to after they've been redesigned as OER courses for us and taught for 2 semesters. And we chose that 2-semester mark because we do try to redevelop our courses in full every 3 years. But we're constantly doing updates to our courses via course maintenance forms, which includes updating materials, changing out assignments if something has changed, things like that. And we felt that 2-semester or 2 parts of term period would allow the course to stabilize a little bit. So we're looking at the completion rates, the DWF rates, the drop rates, and then the student satisfaction scores. The other project that we're working on is a survey of the satisfaction of our subject matter experts or the instructors who are creating our OER courses. And we're trying to figure out their perceptions in terms of the level of support for OER from their leadership and the folks that they're working with on their development teams, as well as the knowledge of OER, what types of trainings they've received in the past if they thought they were applicable to their developments, and then what types of trainings can we offer in the future. And that that's supposed to be finished in the next 3 days. So I've got a lot of work to do still on it, but that should be coming out soon. The course-to-course comparison assessment will probably be out later this spring.
Okay. And this is also to both of you. You may have touched a little on this already, but maybe there's more to say. Where do you go for your own professional development related to OER? So professional development, support for the issues. Is there a preferred source or forum that you turn to for that?
Ooh, great question.
We just joined CCC OER, the Community College Consortium division of the OEC, and we joined that on behalf of all of the colleges within the state. So that's been beneficial to me, just to have those emails and those contacts of people that I can reach out to. But I found that I'm turning away from library professional development opportunities and more towards instructional design or academic leadership opportunities and conferences. I feel that the conversation there helps drive decisions and conversations at my institutional level, because we've kind of gone full in on adopting OER. So I joke that I don't need to convince anyone else to possibly take their course OER because there's not enough time in the day. But being able to get the perspective of administrators and different departments at a higher level, like creates some great conversation and decision making at the lower level where I'm at. Jennifer, do you have any suggestions?
Well, I just wanted to highlight, the function of what we're doing now, the webinars,
Yes.
and how they help with professional development. So go ACRL and CJCLS, yay. I also find that listservs are extremely helpful. I'm a member of several OER related listservs, and I'm also signed up to get the OER reports, OER digests. And that keeps me clued into, major things that are happening, major trends that we're seeing in OER. And yeah, so interesting webinars that are coming in. Like, I think, we're all librarians, so lifelong learning never stops, right? So it's just sort of morphs. And I do find that I'm more plugged into OER professional development related resources rather than librarian related or other topics in librarianship, because that's where a lot of my focus is. But I do also keep track in information literacy developments. But what's great about our team at TCC is that we all sort of have a lead. Each of the librarians kind of has a lead. So we've got, kind of an instructional lead. So then we bring issues for each other in our weekly librarian meetings. So we sort of all kind of keep an eye out for each other and then share them. So OER is my little area that I bring to the table. So I hope that answers your question. I didn't go too far off.
Okay, that's great. And I think we have time for one last question. Several people actually asked about this, Jennifer. A few people wanted to hear more about the thank you letters and working with SGA.
Yeah, SGA, the student. So it was the SGA part?
Well, let's see here. The question just says SGA.
I have a question then, Jennifer, to clarify on that. How
Sure.
did you get students involved, or how do you plan on getting the students involved from the Student Government Association and into your task force or into the development's recommendations or any way that they're also involved?
Yeah, in the fall, Dale and I met with the president of our current student government, who is actually now a legislative intern. So she's super involved in OER at the state level. And basically kind of pitched hey, we really see there's some opportunities to work with our student leaders. And by the way, did you know how involved our student government was at the very beginning? And I believe our library director and e-learning director have done trainings on the new student government leaders have an annual retreat in the summer before they start the class. They talk about OER at that point too. And she was all in. So when Dale and I met this fall with our student government president, that's when we basically brainstormed the student handbook idea, like, hey, we really need to have this knowledge to mentor and onboard new student leaders and how useful that might be. And then she was really proactive in like, what do you think we need at this point? Do we need to have a student campaign for awareness of OER? And we're really kind of past that at TCC. I think there's a good awareness of OER, but it's really more about the positive side and thanking faculty who do use OER. So that's what we're doing. And so Dale is really taking the lead. And he's like hearing me talk about things that he's doing, because I know he's joined in. Is taking the lead with coordinating with our student government president and our VPs that are going to be, having the tables in our student center, and we have sample scripts and supplies and that kind of thing. So we're excited. It's the first year that the Open Education Week is not during our spring break. So we're super excited to finally be able to participate in Open Education Week ourselves. So I don't know if that answered the question or not.
Mm-hmm. It did. And so we are out of time, but I want to thank both of our panelists today, Brittany Dudek and Jennifer Snook Brown. Thank you so much. This was a really, really interesting presentation. We got a lot out of it. I also want to thank Kristen Heathcock for monitoring the chat area and helping to make this happen as the chair of the CJCLS Communications Committee. To learn more about CJCLS and our committees, and to join the listserv for CJCLS, you can go to the ALA website and just search for CJCLS. We'll come right up. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.